Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla stock, let's go over the market, let's talk about what is happening to Tesla stock, rising actually a little bit after hours on the news that I actually posted to my members just now. Tesla set to target the robotaxi launch in Austin on June 12th, which is good news, of course, getting an actual date, early June. Some people were speculating it could be late June, so a little bit of a positive rise on that news, which is good to see. But yeah, let's jump into it. If you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice, and I am not a financial advisor, but again, if you enjoy my technical analysis, I do share my thoughts, post updates, etc., options flow with my members every single day as the market is trading. For just $3 a month, gives you access to the Tesla tier, obviously Tesla technical analysis, chart updates, options flow every single day as the market is trading. Tier 2 includes NVIDIA. Tier 3 includes non-Tesla, non-NVIDIA stocks when I see opportunities worth sharing, of course. So definitely check it out. Link is below. But jumping into a Tesla closing day down, we'll say 1.7%, closing at just shy of $357 per share. After hours, again, like I said, up about 1 percentile on that robotaxi news, which is, obviously good stuff. So what is there to talk about, right? What's the next play for Tesla? Well, I mentioned yesterday how the overall perspective on Tesla on the daily as of right now, even when we were descending this little kind of mini bull flag here, okay, I shouldn't say mini bull flag essentially down over here. And from yesterday as well, I've been saying that, it's bullish. It's absolutely bullish. Now, there is some caveats, right? So let's get into the caveats first, right? What are the caveats? Well, first and foremost, we had the 1 hour did actually lose the 8 exponential moving average. You can see that green line, right? So keep in mind, like last time when we rose from like the 280s to the 330s roughly, you can see we pretty much bounced off of this exponential moving average almost every single time until we finally lost that. And it's not that it was done necessarily, we still went back above it, kind of like what we're doing right now after hours. But the point is the fact that we were pretty exhausted, right? We were pretty exhausted. The fact that we lost that shows that the momentum just clearly isn't as aggressive to the upside anymore, and this unfortunately has the potential of that. Despite this after hours rise, I'll have to monitor very closely to see how it actually goes more, but just losing it in general already tells me the fact that there is that chance, the fact that the momentum maybe is a little bit weaker than we would like to see. Let's just say that, right? So there is that small caveat, but again, even with that being said, just because the momentum could be a little bit weaker than expected, it doesn't mean that the momentum is bearish. It's still bullish. It just might not be as bullish as maybe I would like to see, for instance, right? So keep that in mind. There's a huge difference between those two, right? Distinctions. So just making sure that's very, very clear. And the reason I say that is because the daily is actually still pretty decent. Now, again, we'll go over both the bullish and bearish perspective on the daily, but let's start with the bullish perspective, right? Like I said, yeah, it's still bullish, right? Absolutely still bullish. Why? Well, the price is above the 8 exponential moving average still. You can see after we broke up and we had that massive rally, we ended up getting a massive bull flag right into that exponential moving average, and we're continuing up. And what do you know? We're still continuing up, right? So again, as long as the price is, number one, above the 8 exponential moving average, I see no reason to be literally bearish on the stock. Again, there's a difference between being bearish and buying puts and being bearish in terms of just maybe taking profit or maybe just not really being a buyer up here, right? Two very different perspectives as well. Keep that in mind. But nonetheless, I see no reason to be literally bearish on the stock for pretty much arguably 3 reasons. Like I said, number one, well, we're especially still above that 8 exponential moving average, which tells me that the daily, the momentum is still even like short term for the daily chart, pretty bullish, right? Pretty bullish. Number two, we're still in this rising channel. What do you do while you're within a rising channel? You overall rise, kind of like what we did here. Massive rise, consolidation, another rise, potential consolidation. We'll see, right? There is a chance we just kind of go sideways for a while, honestly, for the most part. But as long as we hold above 350, I think it's still looking pretty good. And then we head up high, right? There is that possibility, right? We don't know exactly how it's going to play out. I'm not going to pretend like I know how it will play out. But what I do know is the fact that while we're within this rising channel, I naturally expect the stock to, well, continue rising. Plain and simple, right? Ultimately. And the final thing, of course, is while these exponential moving averages are all triple flipped bullish, especially, the stock is still obviously in a bullish type momentum situation. So again, all these factors are still good news. Now, again, it doesn't mean that it's all good news. There is some caveats, right? It's just because it's, just because all the EMAs are filled bullish doesn't mean it's just going to rocket up for the rest of, forever and ever and go, $2,000 per share by the next, couple of months. That's just not how things work. Naturally, these things will eventually flip back to bearish, right? And that's what we want to try to figure out. Okay, well, where could that potentially happen? Where, despite the short-term and just even potentially medium-term potential uptrend being still bullish, evidently so, as I just explained, but where could that potentially start flipping? Where could that situation start changing a little bit, right? That's what we want to try figuring out. And this is where this level, pretty much not too far above us, honestly, comes into play. The first level is kind of where we are right now. If you take this trend line and you kind of line it up like this, you can argue the fact that, you know, it is at a pretty massive resistance, especially if you take into account this sort of fair value gap all the way back over here, kind of February 19th and 20th, that we are pretty much filling right now, where, you know, we did get a massive rejection, right? This is pretty much the area where we got that substantial rejection and we got that substantial sell-off pretty much right after. You know, we are around that area. So, you know, Tesla, it does want to go ahead and breach, like, let's just say 365 roughly, right? That level needs to get breached in order to see 375, which is still my kind of main target, I guess you can say. I guess 365 you can argue is like a mini target that has potential to stop things for sure. But again, to me, I would only view that as if only if we start really losing that 8 exponential moving average and closing daily candles below it, and especially falling out of this channel. I still personally want to see closer to 375, best case scenario, short term, 385. Why? There's a few reasons. Number one, you know, this was just a very large area of liquidity that essentially was, you know, is waiting to be tested from a bearish perspective, arguably here, because this was a large level of support for quite a long time. Honestly, this was like almost a month of support essentially that was being held here, pretty much all of January, right? For Tesla stock, right? So coming back up into it and now treating it as a resistance is kind of the expected move from here. So let's see if that actually plays out naturally, right? But there's a few other reasons. Number one, that also kind of lines up with this potential, sorry, I was eating cashews. I have some cashews in my mouth. So it lines up with the top of the channel, the rising channel. That kind of lines up pretty well there as well. And on top of that, you know, we still have, and this is one of my current red flags. You know, I look for red flags, despite the momentum still being bullish. I look for red flags to try to give me early warning signs to maybe be a bit more cautious for, you know, whatever reason. And this is one of my main ones for sure. I'm a big divergence person. I really like divergences, and I see a pretty large divergence on Tesla stock where we've very obviously made a higher high. But what did the stock do? The RSI on the daily is making a lower high. That to me is a warning sign. It's not enough of a warning sign for me to completely and utterly, you know, exit my trading position, of course, but it is enough for me to start being a little bit more cautious about the thing, you know, about the stock overall, and really start to look for any potential other signs that, you know, warning signs, I should say. So, you know, definitely worth mentioning in my opinion, right? On top of that, we didn't arguably do it, but we got really close to printing a bearish piercing candle. If you don't know, a bearish piercing candle looks kind of like this, where you can see the stock opens up higher and then ultimately pretty much gets faded the rest of the day and actually closes below about the 50% or lower sign or halfway point of the previous candle. And you can see pretty close, pretty damn close. Like, look at these two candles. And look at this, right? Tell me that's pretty close. Now, I would definitely make the argument, the fact that we didn't print it. Why? Because we didn't go below the halfway point. In my opinion, below 355 or even better, below 354 would have been more just obvious and confidence inspiring from a bearish perspective. In my opinion, we did not do that. So you can definitely make the argument, the fact that the bulls barely avoided it, but it's pretty close. It is still pretty damn close. So worth still kind of mentioning, right? And the final thing I want to mention is this, right? And this is the final thing I'll mention that, you know, makes me extra cautious also around that sort of 375 to as high as 385. And that's going to be the weekly. The weekly, despite the exponential moving averages, arguably still bullish, actually, right? Still looking pretty good, despite us, you know, being a little bit too far away from them now, especially if we go up to 375 to 385. The one concern I have is assuming, and this is the more bearish perspective, if you're a bear and you're looking for something bearish for the stock and you're like, yeah, this is bearish, there's no way. This is your bear porn right here, essentially. And that's going to be assuming this massive pump that we're getting is nothing more than a massive dead cat bounce to essentially kind of neutralize this extremely aggressive weekly selling pressure that we've experienced, I'm sure, you know, as I'm sure most people are aware, not that long ago, right? Where essentially it's a massive dead cat bounce right into that 618 Fibonacci, pretty much sitting around that 383-ish region, into the fair value gap, into the resistance, and then this is nothing more than just a simple dead cat bounce into a potential move to potentially come down to equal lows, even maybe lower lows below 200, right? Or below 215, I should say. So like that actually is a realistic possibility. I personally, again, my opinion, my honest opinion is I don't think this is going to play out. I believe that we will ultimately eventually go lower. I don't think we're just going to rock it from here, personally speaking, and I'll go over once again on the daily quickly for that. But I don't think this is going to happen. This is like the bearish perspective. I don't think it's going to happen, right? That's just my opinion. That's my honest opinion. We'll see, of course. You know, it's worth keeping in mind, but that's another reason why I'm also, you know, a little bit cautious, I guess, as we approach that 375 to 385-ish region. The 618 Fibonacci is right there. And this is just a dead cat bounce. that's a pretty good spot for the bears to really start coming in pretty aggressively. So we'll monitor that as it progresses, of course. But like I said, I do expect this a rising channel to eventually break, right? I expect us to, well, eventually fall out of this rising channel and make our way southwards. Where do we go after that? Well, once we eventually, find our topping area, probably around this general vicinity, I do expect Tesla from somewhere around here to most likely fall back down. And I expect this liquidity level pretty much down here to get retested. This was a massive level of resistance that took us many, many weeks, even months to break past. And the fact that we broke past that, it's very rare for us not to come back to retest that kind of zone, if you will. Kind of like, back over here. Remember when we had this level over here and we had this massive resistance several times over and over and over. We finally broke past it and it seemed like we'll never go back to test it again. But I kept mentioning that is technically a possibility we don't, but it's very unusual if we don't, right? And not only did we come back to retest that, we actually went well below that. Kind of the same principle, just a little bit on a smaller scale, of course. But the idea is very similar to where, again, massive area of resistance that, held us back down for quite some time until we finally broke out of it. And I do expect us to eventually, again, I don't know how long it'll take. Maybe it'll be pretty quick. Maybe it'll take a while. Maybe it'll be in June, maybe July, maybe August, maybe September. I don't know. But I feel fairly confident in saying that at some point or another within the next, honestly, 4 months, I would say, sometime within the next 4 months, I do expect Tesla to eventually make its way back down here. Again, could be quick, could be a bit longer. I don't know. But once we fall out of this channel, that will most likely start progressing things down to that level more quickly. So anyways, that's kind of what I'm seeing right now. But for now, momentum is still bullish. I'm still targeting closer to 375-ish. And yeah, NVIDIA earnings out in about a minute. So let's see what happens with that. Thank you so much for watching. See you tomorrow. Peace.